Hey friends, my name's Stevie Taylor. Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. My guest today is Mark Costa. Mark is a bass player, composer, arranger and music teacher from Sydney. He came to prominence as the bass player in the house band of Australian Idol. He's also played with a bunch of Australian artists and international artists, including The Temptations, Tom Jones, Leo Sayer, Go West, Debbie Reynolds, Marcia Hines, Margaret Urlich, Shannon Noll, Sebastian, James Morrison, and the list goes on and on. He also plays in a bunch of stage musicals, We Will Rock You, The Bodyguard, Mamma Mia, Priscilla Queen of the Desert, and currently he's playing the stage show Madiba. A super cool cat with a bunch of real cool stories. It was a real buzz meeting him and chatting with him. So here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Costa. Cheers. I think we're rolling. Mark Costa, welcome to the Gig Life Podcast.
Thanks, and it's a pleasure to be here, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, too easy, man. We're in the podcast HQ, the headquarters. There's just a selected few that have been here, so, which is just my lounge. We're just sitting in my lounge, drinking coffee and drinking water. Yeah.
Great.
What are you currently up to?
I'm currently doing a show called Madiba the Musical. It's a musical about Nelson Mandela.
Yep.
I believe it premiered in Paris.
Yep.
And it's written by some French composer and people. So I've been doing that. I replaced Gavin Pearce, who was the original bass player who did most of the Melbourne season. I came in and did the last week in Melbourne, and I've done the Sydney season at the State Theatre, and we did 3 nights in Canberra. And we're on a bit of a break now, and then it does Perth and Adelaide in January.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, who knows?
Yeah. So are you doing sort of matinee shows and night shows, or just one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's kind of the 8 show a week
That kind of deal. Yep.
Yeah. There's a couple of matinees in there. It's a quite a small show. Because I've done bigger shows. I did like Mamma Mia and Bodyguard and things like that, and they're quite big shows. A lot of cast and big productions.
Right.
But this one's relatively small. The band there's only 3 of us. It's only a trio. Right. It's like keyboards, percussion and bass.
Right. Who are those players on that?
So the musical director is Michael Tyack, who's been around for a million years, on piano. A very well-known musical director. The percussionist is a guy called John Clark, who he's Sydney born, but been living in Melbourne for the last 20 odd years, and he's kind of like playing congas and African percussion and
right.
All that stuff, bongos, and then me on bass,
Right.
and then we're playing to a lot of stems, a lot of tracks,
track stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of BVs, and there's a couple of rap kind of numbers in there, so there's some loops and that sort of stuff.
Oh, so that rap stuff and the BVs is in the tracks as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it is a small cast, and
Makes sense.
I think there was like an album that was released, and I think that some of them were kind of like big kind of production type numbers, so they just grabbed that, and I think it's probably maybe economics why it's only just like a 3-piece band. Absolutely. Economics usually dictates everything, the budgets and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So it's actually very rare to do a modern show now where you're not playing to tracks and Priscilla, Mamma Mia, Bodyguard, they're all to tracks. So
bigger bands though with those.
bigger bands. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Mamma Mia, we had there were 3 keyboard players, 2 guitars, and percussion, tuned and untuned percussion, and myself on bass and drums.
Right, I was going to say drums because that's 2 shows you've said without drummers. Or drummers.
No, this was the first show where there hasn't been a drum. Drums in it.
Yep.
And Bodyguard was like a similar sort of setup. I think we had horns. Priscilla, similar setup, had horns. Only 1 guitar in that one. So,
yeah. Who was Steve Marin, the drummer on
Bodyguard? Yeah. Got to meet Steve, and,
cool.
and we had a ball.
Yeah.
Loved his playing.
Yeah, he's playing with Jersey Boys now.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Really.
He was my first guest, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was first cab off the ranks.
I hope he behaved himself.
Kenny Piggy calls himself. Yeah. It was good.
Yeah, no, great guy, great player. Loved playing with him, and he nailed those grooves, and because the whole Whitney thing, the big ballads and all that. Yeah, he was just fantastic.
Did he nail the
yeah, of course.
Because not everybody can.
That's
just
a
play
big
that
moment.
It's one big shot.
Yeah, and if you stuff that up, everyone will know. That's right. No problem.
Ricky Lawson will be turning in his grave.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think there was like a click cue into that. I think there was probably maybe like because where everything's to click.
Of course.
I think there was probably like a click, blam, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Actually, Steve, if you're listening, you might want to, I might be wrong on that, so
maybe
feel free to correct me.
Make a note in the book.
Make a note,
Yeah. Very good. All right, man. Well, let's roll back to the beginning. You Sydney born?
I am Sydney born, born and bred.
Yep.
My parents were musicians.
Okay.
My mother was a singer, my dad a drummer. Yep. In fact, the very first instrument I learnt was the drums.
Oh, cool.
And I was hopeless.
Right.
I have no coordination whatsoever. I've got a brother who's like a year younger than me. And, he's a complete natural. Like, if anyone was born to be a musician, it was him.
Right.
But, he just was kind of like a complete natural, but didn't like to study or, practice and all that sort of stuff. So he was like a really natural kind of drummer and guitar player and all that. But I get on the drum kit and it's like, trying to coordinate my feet with my hands, it was just a nightmare. I was hopeless.
Right.
I'm a bit of an uncoordinated guy anyway, so... drums was my first instrument, and I had an accident when I was about 13 or 14. I broke my ankle, and I was on crutches, and I was going down some stairs, and I actually fell over and broke the other ankle as well. So both my ankles were broken, and so I was like confined to bed pretty much, for a few weeks. There was a bass in the corner. My dad had bought my mother a bass, thinking that my mum's going to take it up and become a singing bass player, And mum lasted about 10 or 15 minutes and just said, no, that's not me, and put it in the corner. And so, and when I had this accident, I was kind of bored, you can only do so much reading and watching TV. So I would just grab the bass and kind of tinker around on it, and this was around 1976, 1977, so disco was a really big... This was the big thing on the radio.
Right.
So I actually would tape songs off the radio and just learn the bass lines, And I probably didn't even, maybe I got close, maybe half close. I can't quite remember, but I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it was a way of actually sort of getting into the bass. I had no technique, just using my ear, and my ear wasn't developed, and trying to figure out these bass lines. So the first song I ever learnt was "You Should Be Dancing" by the Bee Gees.
Yeah, right.
That was the, and then that's it, and because the Saturday Night Fever thing was big. So a lot of that material that was all on the radio, More Than a Woman and all that sort of stuff, and so I was just learning all that, and over time, and this kind of lasted for a number of weeks, and then I just started to develop. This is great fun. I'm having a ball. This is awesome. And my dad noticed it. My dad sort of could see that I was kind of spending hours doing this sort of stuff. And my dad was kind of playing in clubs, RSL clubs at the time, and he kind of brought me in to play with him, at these clubs. So Dad on drums and me on bass, and I would sort of do these club gigs with my dad. And I couldn't read I could kind of get around the bass, but I didn't really have much technique or whatever. So, I pretty much learnt on the job how to read. Like those early gigs were just terrible. Like it would be a trio, it'd be Dad and on drums, me on bass, and the piano player, and we'd be like backing acts.
Right.
And so I'd be standing there with all this music and looking at the bass part, thinking, "What the hell's all this?" Like,
was it notes or?
Well, yeah, notes.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
like actual charts.
And you hadn't seen up to that point.
I was just like it was all foreign to me,
Yeah, of course,
and so, those first few months, I pity those acts, because I just annihilated their shows. There was one act in particular where there was this like flimsy metal stand, and this act had like a 5-page bass chart. And I remember when we started the show, it's like my dad counts off 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm like, we're going, and I'm hitting every wrong note possible, like not even close. It's awful. And then suddenly the music stand collapsed, and the music just went all over the place. And I looked at my dad, and he just said, "Keep going," and it was just like I did not get one note right. For 45 minutes or 50 minutes, or however the act went on. And I remember going up to the musical director of that particular singer and saying, "Oh, look, thank you," and that guy did not want to talk to me. He looked at me, he was just, and I would have been about 16 or 17.
Right.
It was awful, but over time, doing it every weekend.
Yeah.
I got stronger. I got better. I started to recognise things. Things started to become familiar, and I go, "Oh, that rhythm. I know that rhythm," and learn on the job.
Yeah.
And that's how I got.
But did you have any idea of sort of chords and progressions and the notes that made up the chords before you went into that?
Not so much harmony. Like, obviously if I saw like a C major 7, I knew that I hit the C.
Okay.
That's the root note.
Right.
I knew that.
Okay.
So if there was a chord chart, I could actually kind of like do that. But
okay.
I think I was just like really green about everything else.
Yeah.
I had a couple of lessons from various people.
Yeah.
Ed Gaston was a famous jazz bass player. With Don Burrows and all that. So I had a couple of lessons with him. In fact, Ed, I remember going to a lesson at his place, and I would never practice too. I was the worst student, awful. Like they'd say, "Oh, did you practice da-da-da?" And I go, "No." But Ed actually played me that Jaco Pastorius album. I remember he said, "Check this out," and he played that track, Donna Lee. He said, "Check this out," and he played it, and I was just like gobsmacked. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know, how technically difficult it was at that time. All I knew that back then, wow, that was amazing, and it was really good, And then it's amazing how that stuff sort of stays with you, So that was like a really, and I hadn't heard, and that was kind of my introduction into that whole kind of weather report.
Yep.
All that, because I thought, I love that guy's sound and all that, so I would buy a weather report album, which was heavy weather.
Yeah.
What a great time to be alive,
Yeah.
Checking it out and then just hearing Jaco's playing it. I just went, I love that. That sounds great,
But you're right. That it was more the Jaco sound than as an amazing player that he was. But you just knew it was him. You just
so easily identifiable, isn't it? It was just such a
Definitely.
strong sound, strong voice.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, bass players, but actually I might get myself in trouble if I say this.
Go on. Go for it. It's your podcast.
Yeah, I guess so, but still want people to listen. Am I wrong in saying that it's a little bit harder for a bass player to develop a sound?
No, I wouldn't say that, because I think everyone has a sound. Some probably less developed than others, but I think with Jaco, for example, he could pick up any bass and it would sound like him.
Yeah, right.
And he actually famously says the sound is in your hands.
Yeah.
That was like a quote. I remember that was on the front of Downbeat.
Yeah. But I mean, you think of like Marcus Miller and Jaco, Mark King. you know it's there.
You know it's there. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I could say the same about local guys too. Like,
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
like Steve Hunter, for example. Like,
Right.
amazing bass player.
Yep.
And I've got a quick Steve Hunt story to tell
Awesome.
as well. But he's got a really strong, identifiable sound. It doesn't matter what bass he plays.
Right.
It's just and I think it is kind of like the sound is in your hands, but it's also what you play as well.
Right.
We all have our licks and stuff. But that
Yep.
becomes a part of us.
Yep.
My quick Steve story is like after I'd said I'd bought Weather Report and all that, I ended up working on the Fairstar, the cruise ship,
Yep.
and was on there for like 8 months in the reading band, and they had a series of rock bands, and I remember that in one particular cruise, Steve Hunter was in the rock band. It was him and a guy called Guy Leclerc on guitar and Mike Haig on drums. Anyway, so but Steve blew me away. I mean, I was 19. He was probably about 21 or so, and man, he was playing all this Jarko stuff. Like
Right.
all those licks, and he knew. And I was just like gobsmacked, thinking, man, that was the first kind of like local guy that I saw that was just like on the par with what I was hearing. On those records,
Right.
because Steve was just like had an amazing facility, incredible musician. Love you, Steve, if you're listening. And I was just like floored, and I was the guy in the other band that in the reading band, back in the Axe and all that sort of stuff, but that was like wow, this guy, he's like this. He can play all that stuff, it blew me away,
That's cool.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. And of course, he's the legend that he is now. So.
Yeah. I'm just sitting there thinking, have I still got bass player fans now after?
No, of course you do.
No, I didn't offend anybody.
Mate, all the bass players are listening to this right
that's
now,
right.
No, just joking.
Yeah. Okay, so with your dad's, you doing the shows and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's how I basically learned how to read.
How to read, yep.
And all that.
So where did it sort of go from there?
Okay, so actually, funny enough, like I was kind of, I left school. I actually left school at the end of year 11 because I just knew that the HSC, the High School Certificate Year 12, was going to be a write-off because at that point I was well entrenched in music.
Yeah, same with me.
And in fact, this is a funny story, is that, and not many people would know this, but I love those first two Midnight Oil albums, and I played them religiously when I would get home from school, because the bass player on those two records was a fantastic bass player. Andrew, I've forgotten his name. Anyway, played a Rickenbacker with a pick, but just great lines and great, Anyway, so I would go, every time I'd get home from school, I wouldn't be doing my homework. I'd be like putting those albums on and just playing them, back to back kind of thing. Anyway, so I got a day job after I left school in a bank, and I remember.
What were you doing in the bank?
I was
a teller.
No, I wasn't a teller. I was actually in the bank department. It was actually the Bank of New South Wales, which is now Westpac.
Right.
And I was in the department, the personal finance department, and I was looking after personal loans.
Right.
So all the branches would ring in, and then they'd want to get customer balances. It was all on microfiche, very, very primitive, way of doing it. And I was there for about 2 years, and I remember I got a phone call one day, and so this is like 1981, no mobile phones or any of that sort of stuff, old telephones. So I get a phone call, and it's a woman saying, "Oh, how would you like to do a cruise to Tahiti on the Fairstar, P&O Fairstar?" I went, "Yeah, that's great. Look, can I get back to you? I'll just have to find out if I can get some time off." So I went to the boss, said, "Oh, can I have some time off, around this period?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Okay, that's all right. I quit."
Yeah.
So I quit the job, went on the Fairstar, did the trip to Tahiti. It was amazing, it was just seeing the world and going to all those islands and everything.
Did you sail to Tahiti, or you flew to Tahiti, got on a ship?
No, we actually left Sydney and then sailed, and we did Tonga and American Samoa and all that stuff, and then went to Tahiti, then came all the way back.
Yep.
I had an absolute ball, and ended up staying on there for 8 months. So we'd come back to Sydney, drop off those passengers, pick up new ones, and then go off and do Fiji or any of that stuff. So for 8 months, it was amazing. That's when I really started to become like a really strong reader. You know, I was backing acts all the time.
Yep.
You know, and I could play a little bit. You know, I could get around. Nowhere near what Steve Hunter was at that particular time, but but I could get around. I thought I was, you know, a pretty good player.
Yep.
You know, so when that finished, 8 months on that all finished, and then I was back in Sydney, and it was like, well, now what am I going to do? You know, I didn't have anything planned or whatever. So I used to go to King's Cross a lot and check out a lot of the music. It was like, so a lot of bands, a lot of venues, you know, Paradise Room, the Persian Room, you know, later on the All Nations Club, all that sort of stuff was all kind of like happening. And I remember going to the Paradise, it was called the Paradise Jazz Cellar, that's right. And I remember like standing there, it was packed, and there was Victor Rounds playing in a band called Dumbala, with Concentneri, Robbie Krupski, you know, it was Sunil De Silva on percussion. Great band, really, really good band. And I just was going, wow, you know. And then next door I would go in the Persian Room and see Doug Williams and Power. And there was Doug, you know, and they're playing all these funk tunes. Sunil was playing drums on that gig,
right.
you know, and funky as all get out, you know. And then there was the Musicians Club, you know, I went there, saw Barry Leaf's band, Andy Sidari on bass. I think it might have been Mark Kennedy on drums, Andy Byrne. It was, you know, it was an amazing time.
Amazing time, yep.
You know, a lot of great players out there. So as luck would have it, Victor decides to leave Dumbala, you know, and then they had another guy come in who didn't last very long, a Jamaican guy. And then I got the call. You know, I don't know, you know, because I'm not sure how it happened. I think maybe Victor might have recommended me. I'm so long ago, I can't remember. So I got the call and I was in the band, you know. And so there I am in the Paradise Jazz Cellar, you know. I could play, but, you know, I think, you know, my groove was really stiff at that time. And, you know, and all these... But I got to know people coming down to see that band, you know.
Right.
And, you know, and then all of a sudden it's just started to sort of springboard from then. I was in another band called Doug Smith and the Crisps. There was a great bass player in that band called Ian Belton, an amazing pop bass player, played on Ian Moss's Matchbook album.
Right.
Incredible. Passed away, unfortunately, in 1992. Great friend and a great player. And, you know, and I replaced him in that band. So I was kind of like this up-and-coming guy that was doing these sort of gigs, and people were coming to see, you know, those bands and, you know, just getting to meet these people. And then I got a gig doing Jesus Christ Superstar, which is the musical. And then that led to working with Marcia Hines and Doug Parkinson. So again, more people are seeing all that sort of stuff. So I suppose I was kind of like just sort of starting to get known, you know, and you know, the All Nations Club, there was music happening 6 nights a week, or maybe even 7 nights a week. I was playing there, and, you know, so it was all about that sort of like people getting to know you through that, you know.
How many gigs were you playing a week back then?
I was pretty busy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was 7. I won't be that presumptuous, but I think it was probably maybe sort of like maybe 4 to 5 gigs a week, maybe even 6 sometimes.
Yep.
You know, and it was interesting because I was kind of like doing this sort of like the funky kind of stuff, you know, with those type of bands, you know, All Nations. But I was also doing the reading stuff as well, the club thing.
Yep.
So I started to sort of like, you know, sort of rise, if you like, in those different circles, you know, and to a point where, like, you know, it's really paid off now because, like, now you've just got a big pool where, you know, you could be doing a theatre thing one time, you know, for a time, or you could be doing a club thing or a wedding, or, you know, so it's all about, you know, the variety, the diversity.
Yeah.
You know, just being able to put your foot in different camps and be able to cut the gig, you know, in all those things, you know.
Yeah.
So whether it be rock or pop or, you know, sessions, all that, I know people in all those.
Yep.
As we all do. We all know people in all those things, and that's how you kind of make a living.
Yep.
Gee, did that sound long-winded or what?
No, not at all. Keep going.
I think everyone's asleep out there.
Not
Wake up, everybody.
No, you'd be surprised. People get fixated on it. They love it. It's good. How did the Margaret Urlich thing come along?
Ah, yeah, right. Yeah, that was... So a lot of my friends were doing the pop thing. So the late 80s. I mentioned my friend Ian Belton, he was doing a lot of pop stuff. Victor Rounds was playing with Jenny Morris. And Jackie Ozarski was playing with the Rock Melons. So there was all these, great gigs that were kind of happening, And so I kind of, made a decision to sort of, grow my hair a bit and, kind of like, enter into that world.
Because you had long
I had really long hair.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it was like halfway down my back, I know.
I was watching some videos last night.
I know, it's just amazing, isn't it? It's like people look at me and go, where the hell did it all go? I'd like to know that as well. So there was now I'm just trying to think what happened. I think I got a call from Mark Punch, I think. Mark Punch was the original guitar player. Played on the album as well. And, I'm thinking that. I think that's what happened. I think Mark called me and said, would you like to come and, are you interested in, playing some gigs with this girl, Margaret Urlich? And I never heard of Margaret,
Yep.
She was big in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah, huge.
Yep.
I met her brother, actually. I met her brother, Pat, before I met her. So I rocked up and, and I think we did a couple of gigs. A couple of TV things because her album Safety Numbers was about to be released.
Yep.
So we did a couple of shows, and then I kind of just was a member of the band. Great times. I actually, I said this on Facebook recently. I actually thought I was the luckiest bass player in town because that first album, was Robin Smith producing it, an amazing musician and producer. And he was sequencing all these incredible bass lines on these, really cool songs.
Oh, right.
And I'm playing them live, and
right,
touring around Australia, and I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty good. And we're, playing to full houses, all over the place, nationally. We went to New Zealand and supported Farnham. John Farnham was doing the Chain Reaction tour in New Zealand.
Yep.
So we supported him on that. That was amazing. I ended up being with Margaret I had two sort of stints with Margaret. That there was the original sort of like Safety Numbers kind of tour. I think we kind of toured around Australia 3 or 4 times, then I wasn't in her band for a couple of years, and then I came back, and then I was with her again for maybe another couple of years or so.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a great time, great music, a lot of great drummers went through that band.
Yeah.
A lot of great musicians even. Kerry Buchanan, loved playing with him, and Gordon Rittmeister was in there. Gordy's been a friend for a long, long time. Andrew Gander was in the band for a while.
Yep.
John Watson, Watto.
Yep.
Phil Campbell, Mitch Farmer.
Right.
It was pretty good.
Pretty good.
And I was, playing with these cats. It was great.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Hamish Stewart. Yeah, the famous Hamish. He was funny guy. Great player, funny.
Yeah. He's been posting some stuff on Instagram lately. Seems quite funny.
He's hilarious.
I've never met the guy, but he's quite kooky in his posts.
We had a car accident together.
Oh, lovely.
It was my fault.
Bonded.
And, there was a very bonding, and we've got some certain sayings that we say to each other.
Yes.
Kind of funny. 30 years later.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, cool. But Margaret, great singer, great tunes.
Yep.
She was, lover. Awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Now, I first found out about you through Australian Idol, when Australian Idol first came on TV. I was telling you earlier, coming from New Zealand, the only sort of TV band, any bands on TV that I got to see was Hey Hey Saturday.
Mm.
And I used to sit up and watch that. And watch Darren Frugia and the rest of the guys.
Craig Newman,
just incredible. And then, didn't see much else of that on, New Zealand TV or so much on Australian TV, but I wasn't really... It's not till later that I realised there was some other shows with bands on it, but I didn't really know about it. But until Australian Idol came on, and like I was telling you before, I'd never really watched it for so much the acts. I used to just watch the band. And of course, find out who the people were in the band, you know, and I got to find out about who you were and Gordon McMeister and
Rex Go, those guys,
yeah, those guys.
Chris Gamzelis,
How did that gig come about?
Yeah, actually it was kind of...
you were bassist and you became one of the arrangers.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was kind of funny how the whole band thing came about on that show, because if you remember back in the early days of it, it was just John Foreman playing piano to them singing. So it's just piano and vocal. And I think they did it as an experiment. They thought, why don't we try it with a band for an episode or a couple of weeks or whatever. And so that was, John Foreman pretty much asked Gordy, because Gordy and John went to the Conservatorium of Music together.
Oh, right.
And they'd been friends from way back then. And so, John asked Gordy who he would like to play with on bass. And I'd done a bit of work with Gordy prior to that. Like I'd played with a few bands, and actually my dad taught Gordy how to read.
Oh, right.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
When Gordy was in high school. Anyway, so and Gordy recommended me, because I think they were looking for someone that could read and knew all the different styles, could play all the different styles. Mm-hmm. And I think Gordy recommended me. Thanks, Gordy, for that. So that's how I got the gig.
Yep.
And then the original band was myself, Gordy, Dave Pritchard Blunt on second keys, Rex Go, and Peter Northcote. Was the original guitar player, and Gordy and myself. Gee, I hope I haven't left anyone. Oh, and Tony has a party on percussion. Of course, my mate Tones. So that was the original band. And then Peter wasn't with us, and then they got Dave Longo. I think John Bennison might have been doing it as well in that first series, I think. But I remember Dave Longo did it for a bit, and then Chris Gamzelis came in the second series. So I'm kind of fast forwarding here.
Yeah,
so that the band thing, they loved it. That they thought, oh, this sounds great, and then that's how we actually became part of the show.
Right.
And none of us knew what it was really. It was just a show. But it was quite amazing how the public took to that show. It became bigger than Ben-Hur. And I remember that after that first season, they did a national tour after it. And that was just, doing all the entertainment centres, and that was just mental. Like, right. I mean, it was like packed and screaming kids, and, so Guy won that first series, and there was like Shannon and Cosima and, all these people, and everyone's just losing their mind. All the punters are just losing their mind, It's like, it was just incredible. Yeah. And so we're getting flown around and we're playing these big gigs. And I believe there was they filmed and broadcast like one of the shows that we did in Melbourne at Rod Laver Arena. Yeah, it was good, mental. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Right.
And, and then we did the second season, there was like, Ricky Lee was in that, Anthony Kalia, Casey Donovan. Casey Donovan won that series. And there was another tour, same kind of thing, but it didn't it was, it went okay, it wasn't like had the same success as the first season. And then they sort of canned the tour thing. But the show kicked on for like 7 years. Right. After that.
So it was only 2 years of the touring after that.
That's right. Yeah, right, okay. They didn't do that. Yeah, I think because they didn't make probably as much money as the first, so they pulled the pin. So what actually happened, I was doing courses through Berkeley, Berkeley College of Music. Mm-hmm. They actually had online courses taught by the actual faculty at the school.
Oh, right.
And so I did the arranging courses, so that's how I kind of, learned more or less how to arrange. And I actually said to John one day, I just said, if you love to arrange something, if you, have anything, just sort of put my hand up for it, and then John said, yeah, sure. And so I got a song and arranged that. And I remember the band... this is the sort of sense of humour that I have to deal with, I think Gordy might have been the instigator. You know, so the band, you know, John counts it off, and the first note the band plays, it's just sounded horrible. They're all going crank, crank, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And I looked up, I was mortified, you know, thinking, you know, and then, you know, they're all kind of like, you know, looking at their music, thinking, oh, is this right? No, it was a big gag. You know,
of course.
So it was like, you know, so that was funny because I knew it was because like it didn't sound like that when, you know, when I was playing it through Sibelius and all that. But yeah, that's a sort of sense of humour that these guys have. So anyway, yeah, and started to sort of like gradually do a little bit more, and you know, I basically learned how to write for strings and orchestra on that gig.
Right.
You know, because
I used to watch it and go, man, does John Foreman ever sleep? Because it's just so. Yeah, I never realised there'd be more arrangers.
Yeah, well, actually, you know, I'll give credit where credit's due. Dave Pritchard Blunt, who was the second keyboard player, he did the majority of it.
Okay.
You know, because he was quite quick, and he was, you know, a piano player and you know, very great musician. So he would do a majority of it, and then there was another girl, Libby B, fantastic bass player, a friend of mine, great arranger too, and she would do some. So, you know, Dave would do probably, you know, maybe half. Libby would do probably, you know, 4 or 5, you know, a week, and then I would probably get 1 or 2.
Okay.
You know, so it was like the best
All right, so it was really
a week.
spread out. Okay.
Yeah, well, it was kind of farmed out. I mean, but later on, when John had left, I actually did more arranging. You know.
Did he leave?
He left. He left after the sixth season.
And how many seasons did it run?
7.
Oh,
So
okay.
Dave Pritchard became the actual musical director in that final year.
Yep.
Yeah, so he kind of you know, was elevated to that role, and I got to do more arranging because of that. You know, so yeah, but yeah, it was fun, and you know, it was nice to get that extra income as well. You know,
yeah, sure.
Even though it wasn't like a lot, but it was enough to, you know. And I must say that I really enjoy arranging more so than bass playing nowadays.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's kind of because the bass I've been doing it. It's like a, you know, it's like being married to somebody for 40 years or so. You know, I mean, you know, good old dependable bass is always going to be there and all that, and you have that kind of like, I have periods where I just, you know, don't want to play the bass and just put it down, but the arranging thing is kind of really new and exciting, and getting to learn about all the different instruments and what they can and can't do, and you know, voicings and all that sort of stuff. You know.
Yeah, well, that's such a mistake a lot of people make when they try and do their own string arrangements. They write these parts that not even knowing that particular instrument can't play that high. Or that instrument can't play that low. Or
absolutely,
Well, you can't get from there to there on that instrument that quickly. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories about even big budget things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I won't name any movies or shows or whatever, where the person who was the orchestrator was someone that was just a great sequencer or programmer or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they just happen to have, you know, this great sounding string library or whatever.
Yep.
You know, and you could play just unisons, you know, like a C in the violin, C in the, you know, in octaves, you know, in the cellos and all that sort of stuff. But with a great sounding sound library, it does sound amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but it's really not much happening there at all. You know, so. You know, it's a real art to kind of like, you know, study the, you know, the masters and, you know, like check out, you know, string quartets and, or, you know, even look at scores and just see how things, I mean, that actually to me is like, you know, that's like, wow, you know, you check out like, you know, the Planets or something like that, some score, cool. And then you saw like, oh, you know, Appalachian Spring by Aaron Copland, you're checking out, wow, that, you know, that moment there, what's going on, you know, and then you check out the score and just see how they wrote that, or you know, or you know what textures they're using, or you know, it's fascinating. You know, I feel like I'm kind of like a beginner again learning music.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You know, because it's like, you know, I mean, compared to those guys, I mean, they're just monsters. You know.
Yeah, and going back to the quote unquote amateur arrangers type. When you're listening to movie soundtracks and stuff like that, are you listening for that stuff? Do you find your ear go to that?
Look, sometimes I suppose
Yeah.
it depends on, say, the mix, or certain things might pop out. I suppose I'm really conscious of it when I'm watching a movie like Star Wars or any of those John Williams type things, because I just know. But even when you sort of sit down before the opening credits, you just know that musically you're just going to be taken on a ride,
Yeah.
and it's just like optimum orchestra, recording conditions, and all that sort of stuff, But sometimes I just, well, actually not sometimes, most of the times I just kind of let it wash over me, and just, cool. Sometimes, I mean, music's very important in setting up the mood, and all, and identifying characters and stuff. I suppose with the whole arranging thing, I kind of got into the whole composition thing, because it was all about learning how to compose and, studying different techniques on writing music and all that sort of stuff. My whole masters was kind of like done on that. Yep. That whole thing.
You did that fairly recently, didn't you?
I did that. I did my masters. Well, I graduated my masters in 2010, 2011. Mm-hmm. Yeah, got a masters of music and composition.
Great.
Yeah, and that's how that CD that I gave you a copy of. That's how that got recorded. That was the portfolio of compositions, and that was I'm so proud of that CD because the guys, so it was Gordon Rittmeister on drums and James Mellor on guitar, Bill Risby on keys, and Tony Azzopardi on percussion. We recorded that whole thing in 2 days, and their playing was just off the chart. They just rose to it, and I'm just so proud of what the magic they brought to my music.
Yeah.
I'd love to get back into the studio and do another one and with those guys and all that, but life.
Yep. That's right.
Life and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe next year.
That's cool. So that CD, is it? I know it's not available on Spotify or Apple Music because I looked for it today.
Yeah.
And you given me some CDs. Are they available to purchase from anywhere?
Look, I've got two.
I'll put the link on.
I've got 2 boxes at home.
Okay.
So I suppose if they, I can give you my email address and they can, or an email address or a link or something. They can just, if they want a copy, they can just write.
Great. Yep.
I'll post it out to them or whatever.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because, that was sort of like 8 years ago. So I've kind of dropped the ball with kind of like the promotion side of it.
Yeah, it's a different sort of animal these days, though.
It is. Well,
that's back then. Am I right?
Mate, that's another podcast right there. The state of the industry now with the streaming and downloading and all that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about it if you like. The impact it's had on you personally.
Well, look, I mean, hey, it's not like I'm a big recording star or anything like that, but I mean, it's just a shame the way things have gone. With the whole, I'm 56 now, years of age now, and I'm kind of, it's a little bit cynical about the whole thing, which is a shame. I don't really want to feel like this, but it is what it is, isn't it? I just hear, the whole Spotify thing, the really low, pittance of a royalty that they give to people, and all that. It's just a shame. My kids have never bought any music at all, in their lives. Right. It's all downloading, and even my youngest son, he's 14. He was listening to a current thing. I can't remember what it was. And I said, "Oh, how did you get that? Like YouTube or something?" He goes, "No, there's an app that just downloads the music for free." I can't remember the name of the app or something like that. And I went, "Oh, really? Well, someone's missing out on a royalty on that, exactly. So it's all that sort of stuff, So I mean, there's a lot of challenges, and I suppose it's difficult for someone like myself because I've seen the glory days.
That's what I was going to say. You've come from the other side of it.
Yeah, and just seen it kind of gradually erode over time, and even to the point now where, even like 3 months ago, I was looking at TAFE and thinking maybe I should do a course in something other than music.
All right.
Because you know, maybe I should do like accounting, or maybe I should do, you know, IT or something, you know. And I've spent a lot of time, you know, in the music game, you know, trying to get to a certain position with my bass playing, and, you know, and a lot of study and a lot of hours has gone into that. And then just to sort of like, then to think, oh, and I might have to think about doing something else.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
It does, man. It does. Well, what about you? I mean, you know, your view of the industry. I mean, is it similar, or do you hopefully a bit more optimistic?
Yeah, I was for me, I was talking to a mate last week. He asked me a similar sort of thing, and I don't. It doesn't affect me as much on that sense, because I've always had a full-time job, so I haven't relied on music
solely for an income.
Yeah, I mean, and that's always been my choice, you know, and that's just the way that I've gone. But I definitely see the impact it has on people. Like, okay, so I released my own music, and I know how long it took to do that, and the hours it took, and then I got a streaming report back from Spotify. Actually came out today, and kind of looking at it going, well, that's pretty cool, the amount of people that listen to it, but I don't think be lucky to see 20 cents out of that.
Yeah, right.
You know, yeah, and that's just, you know, I'm such a small scale, it doesn't affect me that much, but, you know, I definitely have seen and heard a lot of stories of people that's affecting really bad.
I was just going to say, like, probably a lot of people that you interview too, you know.
Sure.
It'd be really interesting to sort of, like, you know, get their take on.
Yep.
I suppose we've all got different, you know, and here's the other thing too. I mean, the reality is, as I said, I'm 56, you know, so I'm not going to be considered, you know, I'm in a different stage of my career.
Right.
I'm not going to be that sort of like that young, hungry kind of bass player that's going to, you know, try and do all the happening gigs around town. And,
Yep.
you know, I've kind of done that, and now I'm in this next stage, you know.
Yep.
A lot of my students are doing, you know, these great things, you know. One of my students is, ex-students was you know, Camilla Charlesworth, and she's killing it
in the States.
Oh yeah, she's doing great, you know. I'm looking at, you know, Instagram, and she's doing all these great gigs, and, you know, and you know, and as a, you know, and that really warms my heart to see that, you know, because I mean, she always had talent.
Okay.
Even before she came to me, you know, like I'm kind of lucky that I had some influence on her, because I taught at AIM, actually. I haven't talked about that. I taught at AIM for about, you know, a long time, on and off, you know, Australian Institute of Music.
Yep.
And so I got to see a lot of these guys who are, you know, in fact, I just got called for a New Year's Eve gig by an ex-student drummer who was at AIM, who I knew from AIM as a student, and most of the band are these sort of ex-students. They were around at the time, like, you know, so it's that's going to be really nice to sort of like, you know, kind of, you know, well, it's not going to be nice to be the old guy, but it's going to be nice to sort of like see them all again, you know, and get to hear them play and all that, you know. But yeah, so, you know, that AIM thing was great. I got to sort of like connect and somehow influence, and maybe good, maybe bad, I don't know. You want to talk to them, and see, you know, some of them do really, really well. You know, it's really, really nice to see that. You know?
Yeah. But it does sadden me a bit how you're thinking, am I going to have to go to TAFE and do another? Yeah, that sort of hits hard.
Well, it's. I'm sorry, I didn't want to sort of make it into a pity party.
No, it's not what I meant.
But I thought the same thing. When I was younger, I was thinking, wow, I thought new music was going to be look after forever and look after me and all that. But, you know, I suppose, you know, they say that the only thing that's inevitable is change, you know.
Yeah, I guess so.
And, you know, and the industry has changed, and either you change with it or you...
That's the key right there. You know, change with it
or you don't, you know. And it's really a personal thing. I don't begrudge people who, you know, want to, you know, opt out of the industry, or, you know, or become a weekend warrior or whatever. We all got our circumstances, you know, and everyone's got we've got our own stories, and you know, got families to feed, mortgages to pay.
Yes.
Sydney's an expensive town, man. you know, really expensive. So, you know, we've just got to do what we've got to do, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, thankfully, I'm at the moment, I'm writing some string arrangements for somebody, you know, and so, you know, that's great. I mean, I can actually sort of like get some more money outside of bass playing, you know.
Yeah.
And being, you know, so if a young person said to me, you know, how do you make a living in this industry, I'd say, you know, move to the US would be the first thing, go to Berkeley. The second thing I'd say is diversify, you know, just, you know, learn to play, learn to write, learn to sing, learn to record, learn to produce, all that stuff, you know, just got to have your hand and, or your foot in all these different things, you know. That's how you survive.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Gee, that got kind of, that was a long-winded rave too, huh?
No, not at all, man. Yeah, people want to hear this stuff, you know? Yeah. You played with Tom Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That was a TV thing.
Okay.
And Tom had that big hit, If I Only Knew.
Oh, yeah.
You know that big song? Yeah. And so he came out to Australia and then they did a TV special on him. And it was a Ray Martin thing. He was interviewing him and all that. And they, you know, Tom wanted to do 2 songs. And so they put a band in. The MD, Jamie McKinley, put the band together. And it was a good band. It was Peter Northgate on guitar, Kerry Buchanan on drums, myself on bass, Tony Azzopardi on percussion, and Tim Oram on sax, Paul Thorne on trumpet, Herbie Cannon on trombone, and the singers were Barry Leaf, backing singers, Barry Leaf, Aaron Clark, and Danny Olga Hart. Great band.
Yeah.
So we really, really good. In fact, I think there's a clip of it floating on Facebook sometimes. It kind of, you know, pops up occasionally. Anyway, so we rehearsed the 2 tunes, and pretty much we had to play for Tom before the show aired, before they taped the show, so that Tom would either say yay or nay, is the band going to be good enough or not. So we played, and thankfully they liked us. And so we got to play with Tom these 2 tunes on that particular show.
Did you get to spend much time with him?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get to know him. His son was his manager at the time. I don't know if the son's still the manager, but Tom, you know, big kind of mega star. It's like, you know, when you, well, in my experience, you know, you work with these people who are like at the you know, these mega stars, you know. They're always kind of pulled away from people, you know, by other people. You know, they're always got to go over there for a photo opportunity, or, you know, get whisked away or whatever. You know, one of the most humble, nicest people that I've ever met, who has reached those heights, and I still am lucky to play with him on occasion when his regular bass player doesn't play with him, Mitch Cairns, is Leo Sayer.
Oh, yep.
He is, man, he could be sitting here like you and I now, and he would, you know, with all the stuff that he's done and the success and blah, 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 so humble, so down to earth, so, you know, and that's actually really, really nice, because that doesn't happen a lot, you know, in this industry. Yeah. Hey, Leo, if you're listening.
Yeah, cool. That's cool. Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah, well, speaking of that sort of like upper echelon mega star kind of thing, I got to play with her. She did a couple of concerts at the Opera House, and I was in her band. She had an American piano player, American drummer, and everyone else was Australian. It was a big band, you know, horns and all that stuff. And I remember as we were rehearsing, I'm looking over to my right into the wings. So this is on the stage of the concert hall at the Opera House. I'm looking over to my right, over in the wings, and there's Debbie standing there, and she's got these kind of really big, dark sunglasses, huge, and she's just looking like that. So I was looking at it, and I just kind of like just gave a little wave, like to her, like that, you know, little 5-second wave sort of thing. And she just stood there and did not flinch. She did not move. She was just like, you know, and I'm just thinking, oh, okay. I'm not going to get a chance to chat with Debbie anytime soon.
Right.
You know, but Hollywood royalty. You know, back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, and she was great. She put on a good show. You know, and all that.
But no interaction.
No, didn't meet her. Didn't
Really? Wow,
yeah,
man.
yeah. It's funny. It's all
I don't
that. I don't get it either. You know, but I suppose when you've been around for probably as long as she had, she's probably met a lot of people. Maybe back in her day, she was really personable and. But,
maybe something happened. Yeah,
or
the story. Eh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's cool. I think that's a funny story that me.
Yeah, that's
nothing
funny.
happening.
Nothing happening.
nothing. Not even like a didn't even crack a sort of a semi smile. Anything.
Oh man.
Very funny.
Yeah. What else have I got here? Thelma Houston.
She came out and did some shows in Sydney, and I got to play with her. See, that's the kind of cool thing that was happening. Is that I told you about that? The disco thing was huge. Don't Leave Me This Way. I was one of those. In that whole era was there. The great bass playing on that particular track, and then I get an opportunity to work with Thelma Houston and play that song. And so that's one of the thrills. Meeting your heroes or meeting people.
Were you thinking that at the time though?
I know. I was thinking at the time because, when I got the call, I just immediately went, "Oh wow, I'm going to get to play that song and all that." And she was a great singer.
Yeah.
A lot of, she came out from that whole gospel thing.
Yep.
She was an amazing singer. Probably one of the better, one of the best singers I got to work with.
Yeah.
Just nailed it all the time. Could hit all. Had chops, had taste. The whole groove. She did some funky things in her show and all that. Just really nice.
Yeah. And how was her personality? Did you meet her?
Yeah, she was really nice.
Right.
Yeah, she was great.
Yep.
Actually, this could turn into a how nice were they?
Yeah, maybe that's. Were they nice or weren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that might be a thing. I have met people where it's like you kind of think, oh wow, this is amazing, and then they're not nice, or they don't sort of you don't expect them to kind of. Yeah. I remember meeting John Schofield at the basement.
Yeah.
Watching a show, and he was at the bar, and I thought, I'm a pretty personal guy. I like going up to people and having a bit of a chat and stuff, Yeah, but he didn't want to know really,
Really?
He's kind of really short answers and all that sort of stuff. And you kind of go, well, maybe I'll throw out all your albums, Thanks, pal.
Yeah. Now, apart from Jacko, and who were your other bass influences, bass guys?
Well, there's one guy who, it was kind of funny because he's a year or two older, and he's probably 2 years older than me. And I remember he was coming onto the scene, with records and stuff like that. And I used to hear him play and think, and I kind of in my mind, I kind of think, oh well, he and I kind of similar age, and he's a good bass player. I love what he does and all that, and so I cop what he does. And I kind of saw that we were our careers were kind of going in parallel. Stupidly, I don't know what made me think that. Well, the guy was Marcus Miller.
Oh, gee.
And Marcus played on that Grover Washington wine light, and I'm going, that's probably kind of cool. And then I got to hear Marcus, doing all this other stuff, and the guy was leagues in front of me, Marcus is my favourite all time. Even though I don't play like him.
Yep.
I love his playing. I love his sound. I love, his solo albums. Because Marcus is the producer, the composer, the bass player, the multi-instrumentalist. He does it all.
Yep.
So he's like my ultimate. Everything he does, I just love.
Right.
I was lucky to actually go to just after my 40th birthday. I racked up some frequent flyer points, and I was able to go to Japan and see him play at the Blue Note for a whole week.
Wow.
That was a huge thrill for me. I wrote to him via his website and kind of said, "Hi, I'm your biggest fan, and I'm coming to your shows." He did 8 shows. And I went to 7 of them.
Right.
Paid for them. And over there, they do 2 shows a night. I was there for both shows, so
Right.
you know, I was having 2 dinners and all that sort of stuff. And he, on the very first night that I was there, I kind of had a copy of the email that I'd sent, because he didn't reply to it. His management replied to it, and it said something like, "Oh, make yourself known to any of the crew, and then you'll get to meet Marcus."
Okay.
So that's what I did after the first performance. I was waiting there, and the place was empty, and I was just the single guy there, and with my letter, and handed it in, and then I was able to meet Marcus, and man, I was like I felt like the biggest groupie. Like I couldn't string 2 words together and all that sort of thing. He was really nice. And so what he did was he basically said, he was so warm and nice, and he said, look, after every show, come to the dressing room and, we hang out and talk and all that sort of stuff. It was great, And then, the 8th show, he said, oh, we'll put you on the door, And I went, oh, great. And he had this big joke, buy 7 shows, get 1 free, kind of thing. Yes. Which was a big joke. I remember the whole band laughed about that.
Yeah.
But it was like Dean Brown, Poogie Bell was the drummer, and Bobby Sparks was on keys, and Patcher Stewart and Kirk Whalen, they were the horns. It was great. And, what was incredible about seeing that was that even though they were doing the same tunes, the album that they were promoting was Silver Rain. They were doing the same tunes, but Marcus was kind of like had this kind of mild sensibility that, like kind of stretch things out. So no 2 shows wherever were kind of the same.
Right.
It'd be like, and he'd be doing different solos.
Right.
He wouldn't be kind of like just locked in the one thing. He'd be like taking chances. And I literally was probably maybe a bit further back from where we're sitting now.
Yep.
Looking right at him, and just to experience that sound live, watch him move, and he'd jump on the keys and he'll do something.
Oh, right.
Incredible, man. Just, and it basically confirmed to me that he is just an incredible human being, an incredible musician, human being.
Yep.
So yeah, Marcus is my ultimate, but I also like the session guys. I call them the session guys. I really love like Nathan East. I love Will Lee. I love Jimmy Johnson. I love that whole LA, Jimmy Haslip, all those guys. I've got a huge CD collection, and a lot of it is that kind of West Coast, New York, late 70s, 80s kind of fusion kind of thing. Larry Carlton, Lee Ritenour, all those sort of things. I just love that, and I think what I love about it is I love not only the musicianship and the production and all that, but I just love what that whole idea about a musician seeing a part and then them kind of making it their own. Like Nathan East, for example. He just seems to play the right thing
All the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
That in itself is a difficult thing to do.
Yep.
And you now why he's just like super successful and why everyone loves him.
Yep.
He can, and he's got it all. He's got a great sound. He can play, come up with the great part. Everyone loves playing with him. He's always smiling, and he really knows how to market himself too.
And he can sing.
And he can sing
Wow.
too. Yeah, I remember I got a chance to meet Nathan when he came out on that first tour with Eric Clapton. And the band was Steve Ferrone on drums, Greg Fillinganes on keys, him on bass, and Eric Clapton. And then there was the 2 girl singers. And Jarko had just died.
Oh.
Jarko had, I think a month before or something like that. And so in this Eric Clapton show, it's like, them doing all those hits and blah, 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 White Room and da-da-da. They go into A Remark You Made. The tune off Heavy Weather, and there's Nathan playing, the melody and all that sort of stuff. Man, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Just so beautiful. And and I've heard stuff that and heard stories about Nathan, him playing at the Baked Potato. I had friends that have seen him, and and Nathan was playing with Steve Lukather and Bacaro and all those guys, Lost Lobotomies, that whole thing. Yep. That I love all that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, love reading about it, love hearing those stories.
Yep.
And And yeah.
I'm reading Lucas's book at the moment.
Yeah, I've got it too. Yeah, I've just been busy, but I've only read like the first couple of chapters.
Yeah,
so I can't wait to dig into it.
Yeah, he's starting to get deep now.
Is he?
Getting right into it now. Yeah.
And
he's just won the Grammys. That's what I'm up to.
Right.
With Toto 4. So that's where I'm up to in the book.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, that first Toto record, that was one of my. There was like 3 albums that I kind of bought at the same time.
Yeah.
Which have kind of had a profound influence on me because I've kind of they've been there all through my life, you know.
Yep.
The first Toto record, Earth, Wind and Fire, all in all, that album with Serpentine Fire and all that, love that album.
Yep.
I play it all the time when I can. And Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, which was actually kind of released a couple of years earlier. But mate, that album, I mean, the songs and that band, that was like, they were at their prime. Elton was at his prime.
Right.
You know, check out the bass playing on that record. My God, D. Murray.
Just speaking of Serpentine Fire, have you heard Nathan East's version of it on his new album?
Is that the last one he did?
Last year or whatever?
Is that called Reverence? Is that
Reverence? Yeah, it's got they got Serpentine Fires on it.
Oh right, you know what? I think I heard it once and I haven't. Yeah,
and they had the actual. He had the actual Earth, Wind and Fire masters with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a video on it. A video about it on YouTube, Facebook.
Oh, I'll check it out.
He walks into the studio holding these masters and he's going, "I got the masters."
You know what? It's
cool,
it's kind of funny with Nathan because when I heard that first album, you know, and these are just purely my opinion. You know, I mean, you know, everything's immaculate about it, but I kind of wish that Nathan had stretched out and kind of did less covers. Yeah, I kind of get a sense that it was kind of more a commercial.
Well, he had just become, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Yamaha's first recording artist?
Yeah, that's right. Yamaha got this label.
And he was the face of the label and this was
That's
the first.
Exactly right.
Yeah, because I know what you're saying. It was too perfect for me. It was too clean. Yeah.
Well, that's cool, but it was more the choice of songs, and you know, and the fact that he was kind of like doing, you know, a lot of duets, or you know, like pulling the stars in. Yeah. So it was more about, for me, it was more like, I want this to go, or maybe it was him in conjunction with the producer who is actually part of Yamaha.
Oh, right.
You know, Chris Guerra, I think his name is, or whatever. It was more about, let's make this commercial success, and maybe that's more Nathan nowadays. Maybe it's all about the money and all that. But I kind of think, you know, this guy's got like a zillion dollars anyway. Make more of an artistic statement. That's just my personal opinion. Sure. You know, I would have loved to have heard more of his originals. And more of him kind of like maybe stretching out a little bit. You know, mind you know, I mean, you know, it's amazing because the last track on that first album, America the Beautiful. You know, he's playing the melody, it's beautiful, and then the choir and the orchestra kind of kick in. And then when I first heard it, I thought, the schmaltz. You know, it's just, man, it's so Disney. You know, it's like, that's what it felt like. It's like, oh man, you know, like.
See the Jonas Brothers pop up or something.
That's right. You know, Ariana Grande, or whatever her name is. Yeah, you know, come out on Taylor Swift. And, it was more like that, you know, and anyway. But, you know, hey...
Good on him.
You know, and I think it did really well for him, you know. Yeah. So, hey, you know, what do I know? I'm just a bass player from Balkan Hills, you know. All good. So that whole session thing is actually really fascinating to me. And, you know, and having done recording myself, that's something that's really, really, really... I love it. I love the challenge. You know, of trying to kind of come up with something.
It's cool.
You know, not that I'm any huge session guy in the league of those guys, you know. Will Lee is another amazing player, man.
Yeah, first I heard of Will Lee was on the Lost Lobotomies album. And it was just, I can't remember the name of the song. The bass line goes, do-dum, 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 do-dum.
Yeah, man, sing
something about that. Here we go. And then it kind of does this break into an outro part, and just the groove. don't know what it was, but I remember driving up the Central Coast, just hearing that, going, wow, what is this? It was really simple.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I looked it up, and Will Lee, and then there goes my fascination for Will Lee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Studying him.
Well, you know, Will Lee's like, you know, he did that whole kind of Tonight Show
thing,
Letterman thing and all that, you know. But, man, you got to check out, I mean, Will Lee and Steve Gadd were the rhythm section in New York in the late 70s. They played on a lot of stuff, and they were both out of it too, you know, like it was like, you know, but they were, you know, really, really happening. And my exposure to Will Lee, because I mentioned my dad was a drummer.
Yeah.
So my mum and dad are kind of quite young. They had me when they were young. Mum was like 15, dad was 18, you know. So I remember when I was growing up, the first Brecker Brothers album came out. And my dad was like listening to that stuff. He was listening to Herbie Hancock, you know, with the whole thrust thing with Paul Jackson, you know, and Mike Clark. So all that stuff was being played. I remember like doing my homework, and there's my dad listening to that first Brecker Brothers album. You know, Will Lee was the bass player on that.
Yep.
You know, and he just, you know, and he sings on a couple of the tunes, and he just carves it up, man.
Yeah.
You know, and he's kind of like being this guy, this go-to guy that just pops up.
Yep.
You know, and then I'm thinking, man, I love the bass line in that. You know, and if I find it was recorded in New York, chances are it was Will Lee. Yeah,
well, similar for me was on the drum side of things. It was Jeff Beccaro. You know,
yeah.
Even before I knew I didn't know who Jeff Beccaro was until he died. And my teacher at the time introduced me to him. He said, "This is this band called," and he just recently died. Because I think my teacher came to the lesson, and he was really sad.
Yep.
And he told me, he said, "Oh, this guy, my such and such Jeff Beccaro just died. Have you heard of Toto and blah blah blah?" Oh yeah, I've heard of Toto, Rosanna, Africa, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And that started my, I wouldn't say obsession, but fascination towards Jeff Beccaro. And then all these songs that I'd liked over the years, I just found out that
he was the drummer.
He was the drummer on it.
Yeah.
Or he was just part of that sound that I liked, and I didn't even know at the time, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a subconscious thing, knowing that it, you know, he's dead now, so it means more, or something. I don't know what it is, but
yeah, right.
But
well, I think their playing is like, I mean, drummers, you know, like Steve Gadd, for example. I mean, you know, like he's just like drummers revere him, you know, because he's just this amazing. And I think Beccaro certainly is up there as well, you know, but just the body of work. I mean, because Beccaro played on Steely Dan records, and he's, you know, a lot of the soundtrack of our lives. These guys have played it. You know, Gadd was the drummer on Saturday Night Fever. That album.
Was he?
Yeah, he played on Jive Talking.
Oh, right.
With the Bee Gees, you know, that's Gadd.
I just found out that Gadd was the drummer on Dionne Warwick's Heartbreaker.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, actually, another group of albums I should mention too that were very influential were the Al Jarreau records.
Yeah.
You know, so we're talking about like, you know, This Time, which was the one before Jarreau. Jarreau won Album of the Year at the Grammys.
Right.
You know, and that, you know, and the playing on those records, you know, Abel Boyle was the bass player. He's another another influence because he's played on a million things too. That's Abel Boyle Senior. You know, Neil Stubenhouse, you know, I could rattle off a whole bunch of those kind of cats who aren't household names, but they're just, you know, their bass playing has just been incredible, you know, on those
Talking
records.
about Abe Senior, there's a Michael McDonald song called Dirty Talk, and he's the bass player on that, and I knew that. And then I find out that Beccaro's playing drums on that.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go, the two of them, you know. And, and Mike Landau playing guitar.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how amazing would have been for young Abe Laboriel Jr.
Oh, yeah.
when he was learning to go to Dad's sessions and then see those cats.
Yeah.
And learn, like seeing them play.
Yeah.
Probably having lessons off them. You know, they're probably offering tips and all that sort of stuff. I mean, man, how could you not be good?
I know. I know.
You know. See, that all that stuff excites me, you know, because it's like it's such a really golden period of the music that I love, and unfortunately, you know, it's just even those cats. I mean, even like, you know, like in the first few pages of Lukather's book, he talks about going from sessions to sessions, during the glory days.
That's right.
And even he says that's that's long gone. That doesn't happen.
Yep.
A lot of those guys are out on the road now.
That's right.
Gad's even doing gigs out on the road.
Yeah, he probably doesn't need to though, but he doesn't know anything else, so he.
Yeah, that's right. And he's still playing great. So why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
While you still got it. I mean, I saw that Gad gig at the basement.
Yeah, me too.
That was awesome, man.
It sure was.
Jimmy Johnson, man.
I know.
I love that guy. You know. See, he's the perfect session. That sound, plays the right thing. He can pull out the chop thing when it's required.
Yep.
Tasteful.
Yep.
And you can just see that the drummers love him.
Yeah.
I've got him on some pop things. And it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, blah 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 blah.
I think we could talk for hours about this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we should move on, shouldn't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll probably round it up. We're gonna go pick up my kids. So,
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What's the time?
It's 2:30.
Oh wow, man.
Yeah, we smashed it, man. We've been waffling for.
Wow. Gee, I hope there's some gold in there.
It's all gold.
Maybe
it's all staying. Maybe my part. Maybe about me slightly insulting bass players.
No, mate. I was here. You didn't insult me whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, man. It's all good. It's and thanks to you, man. You kind of like getting to hear all that. All of us talking about all this stuff. It must be so exciting.
It is. It's a buzz.
It's kind of great that you're kind of carrying the torch.
Yeah. I'm. Also, hopefully, the younger cats that they get to listen to the. You guys' stories, because they're important. You guys paved the way, so to speak. And
well, you know what?
Still paving the way,
Still paving the way,
Yep.
I mean, and, there's a lot of guys I just dig what they do, Adam, we talked about before, Dawano, amazing, Cats, Camilla. It's I just get off watching them succeed, watching them play and listening to them and bring this whole, energy, to the whole thing. It's really, really cool. God bless them. God bless them all. Wish them everyone, every success.
Awesome.
Yeah. What would you like to end on that, or would you like to end on me telling a gag or something? Or...
You can tell a gag if you got one.
No, I don't have one.
And then I can say, on that
note, I don't have one that's probably clean. No. Oh yeah, I remember my son telling me one time, he said, "Dad, what's a Shih Tzu?" This was a couple of years ago. He was like, I go, "It's a dog, isn't it?" He goes, "No, it's a zoo with no animals." Boom, tish.
How we were talking about what we're going to cut out? That's probably
one of them. Go for it.
Just kidding. Mark Costa.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Cheers, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man.
All right, beautiful.
All the best. Cheers, bud.